Hello and welcome back to the Guns on Pegs podcast. This is episode 9 of series 2. We're so close to the end of this series now, which is a real shame. But Chris, we are cooking up plans for the next series already, aren't we?
We are, and I'm super excited, George. We actually, question for you, how many meetings have we ever had about this podcast?
Maybe 2?
So the original one when we thought, shall we do a podcast? And then the one when,
Yep.
shall we do it again?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's about as far as it's gone.
So what happened today?
Well, we actually did have a meeting.
So this usually means it's either dangerous or seriously exciting. And this meeting was not about season 3, which would be your first thought for our third meeting. It was about something far more, I suppose, interactive than that. And we're going to come back to that shortly because it involves you, our listeners. Really looking forward to discussing that.
Yes, more on that story later. But first of all, Chris, who's our guest today?
Well, this is the very aptly titled "Not an Influencer" episode, which is my favourite title for an episode yet. And our guest today has 70,000 followers on Instagram, but she's not an influencer. She appeared on TV alongside the likes of Piers Morgan and Jodie Marsh, promoting and sometimes defending shooting and hunting in some hostile environments. She's the author of her own successful game cookbook called Game and Gatherings, and she's a seriously accurate shot as well. It's Rachel Carrie.
Hi. I don't know who you just described, but I'm standing in for that person.
Welcome along, Rachel. It's great to have you with us.
Hi, thank you.
So, not an influencer. Can you explain?
Yeah, Chris didn't have a name for the podcast. That's basically it. No. Nothing more to it. Nothing to see here. Move along.
Okay, we'll gloss over that then, shall we? Go straight on to what's that you're drinking, Rachel? What have you got?
I have a margarita. So it's not actually a margarita. It's a cheat margarita. I am a big fan of tequila. I don't really drink a lot, believe it or not.
Until 4 p.m. on a Wednesday.
No, I have this really strange thing about alcohol and drinking, and I'm not judging anyone. You know, everyone in my family likes to drink nice wine. You know, they're really into the nice reds, and I just don't have that relationship with alcohol. I basically, if I drink to get drunk.
rolling back the years.
I'm just gonna be as blunt as that about it. So when you invited me to do this podcast and said, "Oh, you should listen to some of the podcasts," and I do listen to your podcast, by the way.
That's very good.
Flattery gets you everywhere.
Yes, and you hear people come on and it's the nice reds and the 70-year-old whiskey and aged in barrels found in the bottom of the Aegean Sea in 18 whatever. And here I am with my tequila.
Perfect.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, at the end of the last episode, I was definitely a bit pissed. I got a bit carried away. So that would have been absolutely fine if you'd come on and got hammered. That would have been no problem at all.
My choice of alcohol is basically none more than reflective of my ethos of alcohol, and that's I drink to get merry. So I drink tequila because, of course, as everyone knows, tequila makes you happy. So that's my tipple.
Tune. We could probably intro that bit of music right at the start of the pod.
Perhaps it should be our new theme tune.
Well, we'll come back to that because it's definitely better than the suggestions we've had. So I'm all up for that. I'm on my wild tour of Kent drinks. I was drinking a beer last time, and I have a cider called Wild Disco Cider, which I think is an awesome name. It's handcrafted at Gibbet Oak Farm by the Nightingale Cider Company in Tenterden in Kent, so literally just up the road from the beer I had the other week. And I must say, I've never had this before, and it's epic. I really like it. But I've also got one of their other ones next to me because I've learnt from my rookie mistakes in Series 1 that having one drink is not acceptable on a podcast. So, I'm all tooled up with some lovely ciders.
Very nice.
I should add, I feel like I should add that I didn't realise you had to actually explain. I was trying to brush past the fact that I drink tequila. Mine's actually the George Clooney Casamigos tequila. It's a really, really nice,
Oh,
smooth tequila.
Ooh,
It's my
wow.
personal favourite.
So-
See, I'm not just a savage.
but there's you having a go at people's whiskies, and we've got a George Clooney tequila. I mean, talk about being fancy.
That's quite an interesting story behind that company, isn't it? Because I think they created the company, started making tequila just for a bit of fun, and then they accidentally made like $1 billion company. They sold it for a huge amount of money.
Yes. And they did it just off the back of two guys saying, hey, we like drinking tequila in the afternoon. I think we need something a little bit smoother. So it's a great reason to start a company.
And margarita's a good way of having it, though, because I can't stand tequila unless it's in a margarita.
I could just see you with a margarita, Chris.
Why is that, George?
I'm not going to elaborate.
Explain yourself.
No, not gonna.
It is a gender neutral margarita, I might add.
I must say, I've never made one. I wouldn't even know where to start. If I have one, it's because someone else made it for me. So beggars can't be choosers, you know.
So I'm going to give you, I'm going to give the listeners and yourself a little tip on this. So I'm not some kind of home cocktail mixologist. I'm the same. I can't be bothered with the fact. So a really great margarita hack. Marks and Spencer's sell a kind of a fruity cordial. It's called Mexican lime. And if you squeeze of lime, fill your glass with that, of course you need a salt rim. It tastes just like a margarita from a bar. So Marks
Amazing.
and Spencer's Mexican lime cordial margarita hack.
That's a proper hack. I like that. Indeed. Good for a train.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always find that I'm buying cheap booze from M&S, especially the old G&Ts in a can before a train journey. So I'll go for that. Go for that route next time. George, what are you drinking?
Well, I had a bit of a saga at lunchtime today when I suddenly realised I needed to get a drink. And I've mentioned the shop on the high street near me called Hot Burns and Black that sells beer and hot sauce. So I thought I'll nip up there and get an interesting beer, and that'll be fine. And I got there. I was actually on the phone to Chris at the time, and it was closed. It didn't open until 2:00, and I was an hour early. But the beer that I would hope to get was one that's actually brewed in Deptford, just across the high street under the railway arches. So I thought, I'll tell you what, I'll just nip down there and see if they're in. And I was sort of standing outside, looking through the window, trying to see if there's anybody inside. And the bloke who runs the place came up behind me and said, "Can I help?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I hope you can. Can you sell me some beer? I just need, 6 cans of this and 6 cans of the other one." And he's like, "Let me just go and see if I can find our card machine." And he came back out a couple of minutes later and said, "I can't find the card machine, but I'll tell you what, come down to the storeroom with me. I'll give you what you want. And when we're back open again in April, you can come down and pay me." So I walked away with 12 cans of beer. So I've got to give an absolutely massive shout out to the Villages Brewery in Deptford for really getting me out of quite a sticky hole. So I've got, to begin with, I've got their pale ale, which is called Rodeo. And then to follow it up, I've got the Whistle Lager. So it's literally brewed on Deptford High Street, which is about a 5-minute walk from my front door. So it's about as local a beer as it's possible to get. And they're really, really nice. So yeah, that's me.
That's
Nice.
really good of them.
Yeah, amazing.
That's so good. And I was thinking about when we actually start recording these things, when we're not working from home, and we're actually face to face, we're gonna have to think about locations, about where we record them. And the Beehive is our classic local near our office in Vauxhall, on the way to the Oval Cricket Ground, for those of you who have been to the test there. But to be honest, that brewery, they've just called themselves up big time for live recording of the podcast at their place, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, I mean, that might not be the best acoustics because it is a railway arch with a couple of big, stainless steel brewing tanks in it. But yeah, it could be quite good.
Fair enough.
Right. We've all got a drink, which means it's time, Rachel, to put you to work with the section called Whose Bird Is It Anyway? This is where we ask our listeners to send us in their shooting-related quandaries and queries and dilemmas, and we are going to try and resolve the dilemma. So this one comes from somebody I have decided to call Igor. He writes, "I am reasonably new to the field sports world. I've always been interested in it and dipped in a toe occasionally, but never really had the chance to get into it properly until a couple of years ago when my uncle invited me as a guest. The following season, I joined a local syndicate. It's a basic beat one, shoot one, which is a great way to start learning all the ins and outs. So thanks very much for your podcast, as I've taken something away from every episode so far. Please keep it going. So, on to the dilemma. This year, my fiancée Ivana and I got ourselves a Labrador. Luckily, before the dog market went wild. I took this as a chance to jump two-footed into the field sports world. I've always wanted to train and work a dog, and didn't want to be that one with the badly behaved dog on a shoot day. I've been doing loads of reading and research on the best training methods and so on over the past 10 months. Basic obedience was good, as it's simple and my fiancé and I could both work together getting the basics nailed. Now we are getting to the more tricky training elements, and the reading and the research and the videos are all paying off. The dilemma is that Ivana sometimes goes a bit rogue with her handling on the walks, using different variations on the commands and so forth. It will be me that works the dog 99% of the time, but she needs to listen to the commands, whether it be a day-to-day walk or out working. Now, do I keep going, letting Ivana have her occasional rogue moments on walks and just work extra hard on emphasizing the commands to the dog when I'm doing formal training? Or tell Ivana that she should be doing it slightly differently, so we're super consistent with commands? At the moment, I'm picking and choosing my battles and slowly winning her round to keep consistency in the training. But not every battle is won, and there's sometimes an awkward walk back from the field. Wondering if you guys would be doing the same. So, I don't know, you have a dog, do you not, Rachel?
I do. I have a Chihuahua, just keeping in with the Mexican theme there, and a French bulldog. So obviously, I am the foremost expert on training gun dogs. But I will say, I have to give Bunny a shout out, because this season, if there was a season, Bunny actually retrieved her first partridge. It's taken her 5 years for me to get her to that point, but she broke free on a drive and she retrieved a partridge for me. So just a bit of a shameless brag there for Bunny.
And Bunny's the bulldog?
Bunny's the French bulldog, yes. My Chihuahua's been retrieving partridges for years. I do have ratting terriers. The main training that I give to them is basically they need to be as wild, as ruthless and savage as I can basically get them to be. So my Patterdale actually climbs trees after its prey. So basically, I am the worst person to ask for advice about gun dogs. What I would say is my good friend Ben Randall
linkage.
is a very good dog trainer, one of the best in the country. And I hear he also does a buy one, get one free kind of special on wives and girlfriends too. So you can take your wife and girlfriend with the dog. He has boarding on site and he can train them both.
I was going to say, I don't think Igor is asking for dog training advice here. I think he's really asking for relationship advice. And I'm not sure that we're necessarily very well qualified to offer it. But I mean, I remember Ben saying when he was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago that that getting everybody using the same commands is really important. Chris, how are you going to get on when you get your new puppy? How's that going to go?
I was listening to this dilemma thinking, this is literally me in like 6 months' time, isn't it? It's going to be... I can totally understand where this guy's coming from. He puts in all that hard work. He's super nervous. You can imagine like being invited on a really nice shoot day and like the dog doesn't listen to the commands that you spent really like loads of time training it for because your other half ruined it, which is out on the walks or whatever. Oh my God. Like it's just got nothing to do with the dog, this, does it? It's everything to do with their relationship.
Yeah. And I mean, he did say, I slightly edited his email, and he did say, don't worry, our relationship is fine. It's just this one small point that there's every now and again a bit of tension. So I think, with the best will in the world, if you want your dog to be as good as possible, you're going to have to put your foot down about the commands, probably, or send her off to Ben Randall for some high intensity training.
You might not get her back. Ben is quite the ladies' man.
poor bloke hasn't got a chance to respond.
Oh.
I must say I was struggling to concentrate when you called them Igor and Ivana moving through the alphabet with your names.
It's one of the highlights of planning the small amount of planning that we do for these podcasts is I get to choose a stupid name for our correspondents so that we don't give away their identity. I do wonder. I hope if anybody has been identified by somebody that they know, let us know, because I'd love to know if we've been successful in keeping everybody secret. But yeah.
I think just to round this off, for me, he's got to decide what he wants here, because this could well turn into something a lot more complicated than he's asking for. I think he needs to accept: is he going to have a slightly rogue dog from time to time in a very stable relationship, or a pretty prickly relationship and an on-point dog?
Consistency is king. And Ben Randall did actually teach me, even, look, you can, whatever you, there's a lot that working dog training you can apply to what I call novelty dogs, such as mine, Bunny and Baby the Chihuahua. And we actually have this in our household where I will use one command, son Mark will use a different command, and we are constantly arguing about how it's really important to talk to the dogs using the same commands. So Ben Randall's advice is correct. Consistency is king. So the wife needs to go because the dog's got more chance of being trained.
Brutal. We were worried about having too many male guests on this, and obviously we've now had, this is our second female guest in a row, and we're getting some seriously sort of male orientated advice. I feel here, this is not what I was expecting.
Hopefully we get away with it, Chris.
Indeed.
Now we've got more correspondence.
We have. In the last episode, we asked you all if there were any bands out there who could help us with the new intro music, because I suggested, I'm not sure if George agrees, but I suggested that we've been using our intro theme for quite a while. And we've had a couple of send messages in, which is wonderful. A couple of bands who contacted us. Awesome. One particular one that jumped out at me, not a band in any way, shape or form, but Will Pocklington, the editor of Shooting Conservation, the Bass magazine. He got in touch on the matter of the intro music, and he said, but we're pretty sure he's taking the piss here, because he suggested that former podcast guest Tom Payne is a dab hand on the triangle. So,
so what? Just a Tom Payne triangle solo to introduce the podcast.
Yeah, well, if we get him in and we just sort of get him to do the triangle over the top of the current podcast intro, we can sort of Tom Payneify it, and it would just come out even worse than it already is.
Brilliant. I love that. So the other thing that we ask people to provide suggestions for is like the collective noun, or like the group name for the people who've been contributing to the podcast over the last couple of series. And we've had a couple more suggestions. One that I quite like came from Charlie Brownlow, who I think is a good mate of yours, Chris, isn't he? And he suggested a slab, as in a slab of cartridges or a slab of listeners, which I think is quite nice. But then I've also had my own idea. Do you want to hear it?
Please.
So I was thinking, you know how we've been giving out these garters?
Yeah. Which Rachel gets a pair after this.
Oh, yeah.
Super exciting.
Yeah. So I was thinking, what about the order of the garters?
I love it.
The worshipful.
Yeah, the most noble order of the garters.
So you have to be ordained into the order of the garters. Is that what we're saying?
Well, I think you're knighted, aren't you? I think it's. I think you're knighted, and that's how you become a member of the Order of the Garter, the real one. And so we're just stealing the name and adding an S, which I think is also in keeping with a lot of the way we do the naming around here.
Yeah.
Is to steal somebody else's name and adjust it slightly for our purposes.
Oh, I love it.
What do you think?
I think that is absolutely brilliant. And to be honest, I challenge anyone else to beat that. But I have a feeling that you're going to hold that crown, George.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
Has anyone come on here glugging tequila yet?
No.
That's what I want to know. So do I get a special pair of garters?
Oh, I've got that. That's a lot of effort. But
we've had these specially commissioned, these ones. They are pretty exclusive.
I think they're awesome. But just quickly on your, if you've got the Order of the Garters, can we fit in slabs anywhere into that? It's like the polar opposite. Like members of the Order of the Garters are just called slabs.
I mean, we could have like grades, so that for different levels of contribution. So like a listener is like a listener. That's the slab.
Yeah.
It's like the big bulk of them. So if you're just a listener, you're a slab. And then as your involvement goes up, you get different levels of garteriness.
So of garteriness. So what happens if what happens if you've clicked like 5 stars on the App Store, on the podcast store for like your for rating us? What are we calling those people? Because they're definitely more than slabs.
You're a slab star.
Yes.
Slab star.
Right. If you want to be a slabster, 5 stars on the old podcast store, please. That would be awesome.
And let us know that that's what you've done as well. Leave a review.
Yeah.
That would be nice. So, yes, if you want to become a member of the most noble order of the Garters, send us in a confession or a quandary or a dilemma for us to read out, and we'll send you some Garters, and you can join the most exclusive club in shooting. Also, we still like to know where people have been listening from. If you're a band, get in touch. If you've got an idea that you think is better than the Order of the Garters, we'd love to hear it. Or a name for sort of one of the levels within the Order of the Garters, that'd be great as well. So, Chris, at the very beginning, we mentioned that we've been doing some planning, and we trailed it, and we said that we talk about it a bit later on. It sort of vaguely relates to both of the things we've just been talking about. So do you want to go into a bit more detail about what we've got in the pipeline?
I do indeed. And yes, so Rachel, you're involved in this one, okay? I need your support, whatever we decide to do here. So what happened is that after Boris announced that the world was going to open up again, we got seriously excited, and we thought, right, how can we celebrate this? So we got together, George and I, just very, very quick conversation in passing. Certainly wasn't a meeting, because we don't really do those. But we had a meeting today with some people that we will let you know about on the next one, because we hope our deal is going to come off. But we are going to have a massive party. It's going to be the Guns on Pegs podcast party, and it's going to happen at some point when the world opens up again. So from this point, all we need for you guys out there is to let us know. First of all, email us, pod@gunsonpegs.com. First of all, would you like to be there? Secondly, what can you do? What can you bring to that party? What can you do to get involved in it? I'm looking for jugglers, people on stilts, people who own tequila companies. George Clooney can come. This sort of stuff. We want to hear from you. If you think you could be involved in this party and you can add a little something to it, it's going to be a one massive collective experience of making it a real success. So please get in touch, pod@gunsonpegs.com. Rachel, are you coming?
Of course. One of my earliest memories of kind of introduction into the kind of the industry was actually the famous Guns on Pegs party many moons ago. And it's when you had the game fair and you took the stand with the party above.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was an insane evening.
I was
so definitely down for a Guns on Pegs party.
Okay, so I was clearing sick off the balcony of that game fair stand at 2 a.m. that day.
It's just in case anybody thinks that working at Guns on Pegs is a glamorous job, that just underlines that you couldn't be further from the truth.
Or if you thought it before, now they've had me on, me and my tequila, it's gone downhill.
So that particular party was epic. That was we did a partnership with Chase Vodka for that party at the game fair at Blenheim in 2009, 10, something like that. It was awesome. No, 11. I don't know when it was. 11, I think. So in that similar vein, we've got past reputation in holding parties, but this one is going to be the biggest and best yet, because it's the podcast party and it involves all of you guys. So that's why it's going to be so good. Yeah,
I'm really excited about this, Chris. I think it could be a lot of fun. And you're going to have to keep listening to the last episode in this series, and then we're pretty sure that we're going to have another series coming out, pretty shortly after the end of this one. And you'll have to keep listening to that as we're going to drop details in to every episode as the series progresses. So keep listening, tell your friends, all that stuff. But I think, Chris, it's probably about time that we had a bit of a chat with Rachel, don't you think?
We've got to ask Rachel some hard-hitting questions, I think.
Before we do that, I just need to open my other beer. Hang on a second.
Well, look, I will crack on. I'll take over from you and George in that very professional way. So, Rachel, obviously, there's tons of people in the shooting world that will know you in many different ways, actually, from the various things you've done. You've got a huge following on social media, been on TV, in the papers, but for anyone that has been living under a rock, can you give us a quick overview of how it is that you came to write a game cookery book as well? given that you were once upon a time a vegetarian?
Dun, dun, dun. Well, I'm not a vegetarian anymore, I might add.
Important.
I've just lost 35,000 followers on Instagram when you said that. How did I come to write a game cookbook? As you say, I have a pretty decent following on social media. God knows why, because I'm a bit of an arsehole. So, no, I suppose people are interested in what I do. I'd like to think I put decent information out there, and have always tried to be encouraging and informative on social media. I almost feel like a fraud actually writing a cookbook. And I feel whenever someone asks me this question, I always feel the need to say, I'm not a chef, I'm not a chef. But the whole point in it was, have you seen the Disney film Ratatouille?
Love it.
just stick with me, stick with me. So there's a point here. So, Chef Gusto and his book, and the whole theme is anyone can cook. So I suppose my cookbook is the same thing. So if Rachel can cook game, anyone can cook. So I was doing, as Chris pointed out earlier, all of this kind of news and media stuff just by pure accident. And I did amass a following. And at the time, we had not problems with placing game, but there was a lot of kind of hype around, we need to promote game more. We need to get more people consuming game. We need to promote game in a better light, and make game more relevant in today. So I suppose I decided, instead of using that following to, I don't know, create content for brands, for example, which many people use social media for.
Hashtag
Instead
not
of
an influencer.
yeah, hashtag not an influencer. So instead of using my following to, for my own kind of personal gain, and I thought it'd be a really nice thing to do something impactful and do something which helps the industry. At this point, I'd done the documentary with Jodie Marsh. So believe it or not, I'd actually amassed quite a few people who were like Jodie was at the end of that program, prepared to kind of be on the fence a little bit. And I thought, what great language to speak to vegetarians, vegans, or people who just weren't quite sure, than through food. So the cookbook idea came about. I'd started getting a little bit more confident and posting my cooking online, and was absolutely gobsmacked when people were commenting on my photos saying, oh, what's the recipe for this? And I was like, oh God, I don't know. I just kind of throw things. I'm a busy working mom. I get home, I just kind of whirlwind the kitchen and throw things together. And so it was a few comments. Oh, you should write a game cookbook. You should write a game cookbook. So I guess I decided I would. And as they say, the rest is history.
That's awesome.
And so is my game cookbook, because it's sold out. So there's none left.
Congratulations.
So this is not a promotion. Please don't try and buy it. It's sold out. So
That's really cool, though. It's a proper thing that came out of a need, in a sense that you recognise, obviously, like some issues that shooting and game was facing, and then obviously, did your little bit about it, which is cool. And I suppose that was what everyone needed to do their part, and you channeled your bit in that way.
On the social media side of things, Rachel, I wanted to ask, obviously we've heard recently there's been news about gamekeepers being on the receiving end of online abuse, and I suppose also some sort of in real life abuse as well. But with your following and your sort of profile, do you find that you get some unpleasant contact as well, or unwanted contact from people on social media? And how do you sort of deal with it?
I used to get a hell of a lot more than I do now. And I've been trying to fathom why that could be. And I checked my Instagram block list recently, and it's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of names long.
Really?
Wow.
Seriously. So I'm thinking, have I blocked the worst of them?
You've completed it.
You've blocked more people than we've got followers. That's awesome.
Pretty much, yeah. So yeah, I have really strict boundaries where that's concerned. If someone is abusive, if someone comes in my space and is abusive or tries to bully me or is unkind, I delete and block them. That's the best thing to do. That's how I deal with it. Every now and again, more of a sense of duty. Every now and again, if I do get a question or someone who disagrees with something I've said or something that I've done or something that I've put out there, that they approach me with respect, and the more questioning, rather than making false statements, then I will now and again, if I have the time, take the time to respond to people, be polite, be informative, educate them. And more often than not, you always find in those circumstances, it ends up in quite a pleasant exchange, respectful, and they do kind of come round to your way of thinking. So I do get a lot of abuse, but
Do you feel it's getting? So you mentioned obviously you blocked so many people, so it's not necessarily getting worse for you, but in effect, I suppose it might be if you hadn't have blocked them. But as a general rule, do you feel it is getting worse towards people that shoot on social media?
um, I don't know that it's getting worse or whether people are perhaps taking my lead a little bit, and maybe tackling online abuse differently. I do get a lot of messages, and some of them are quite heartbreaking because, I've had messages from teenagers who are saying, we're being bullied because we've chosen to share, um, or people saying, how do I deal with these comments? And I try and help people, equip people with, the kind of knowledge on how to do that, how to tackle it. And I've got to say, most of the time, the answer is delete and block if they are abusive. But social media is making, obviously more people are sharing on social media, so it's making, it's putting more hunting and shooting content out there. So of course there's going to be repercussions of that. Of course it's going to be more visible to people. The abuse will only come, I think, when you put the wrong type of content out there. You've got to be really careful how you present shooting. People have the attitude of, oh, I'm not doing anything wrong, it's legal, why should I care? But you've also got to understand that people are so not in tune with the countryside and nature outside of those people kind of living in the countryside. So you just have to be mindful of that. And if you want to put that type of content out there publicly, because everyone can make their Instagram and Facebook profiles private, if you want to put that out there publicly, then you've kind of got to expect some abuse to a certain extent. You've got to expect people to not understand, because it's just not who we are as a society anymore.
This is such a talked about thing amongst, well, so many people within shooting. I mean, it's even been talked about on our podcast before. We had the Daily Mail journalist Guy Adams in the last series on, and he made a strong case for shooting doing its very best to stay under the radar and out of the papers and basically out of the spotlight, full stop. But it does divide opinion. Do you essentially disagree with that then, because you are sort of trying to tackle it head on?
I suppose in a way I was kind of forced to tackle it head on. Many years ago, someone, I can't remember what year, I'm not going to delve into history, but it was, I think the papers, still to this day, don't know who or how, just got hold of one of my images. And what people don't realize is a lot of times that I've been in the paper, I haven't chosen to
Yeah.
be, or actually given comment to the papers.
Yeah.
I try and kind of stay out of it. And then you get to a point where you think, well, they're going to print these things about you anyway. So do you kind of get those sound bites in there? I found that it is worthwhile getting the sound bites in there, um, the positive facts about shooting, the not even just the positive facts, but just the facts. The amount of people who see a shot deer and say, "You've killed that deer for no reason, murderer,"
Yeah.
and all the rest of
Yeah.
it. And when you actually sit down and you give them 3 facts of why you've shot that deer, they oh, okay, so you're between the devil and the dark blue sea of, okay, do you censor it completely or do you get the good information out there? I've got nothing to lose. I think I've done a pretty good job up to press. I've avoided the bad press. I'm savvy enough to know what type of, there's certain TV shows that I've turned down and said, no, absolutely not, because you just know that they're going to portray you in a bad light. And then there's scenarios where I've made a good call and we've converted, God, thousands of people, literally thousands of people.
So that was one of the things I wanted to ask you, and it's something that we asked Charlie Jacobi when he came on as well, because he's like you, he's done quite a lot of TV appearances, and we've alluded to some of the stuff that you've done. You did this morning a couple of times as well, I think. Do you feel like you managed to get your message across, and particularly on this morning, or is it basically just being shouted at by Piers Morgan for 10 minutes?
Well, it depends what interview it is, because I've appeared on This Morning twice. I went on This Morning and it was just me on the sofa with Ben Shepherd and Jenny Faulkner. They were amazing, absolutely amazing to be interviewed by. I sat down immediately. Don't get me wrong, you have to, I suppose, through the years of doing this and media contacts, I have built up an awareness of, like I say, who to work with, what scenarios to go into. And I sat down on that interview. The first thing, Ben Shepherd, before the cameras were rolling, he leant over, he said, "Oh, Rachel, I love what you do. I shoot with my dad." Probably shouldn't say this, get him in trouble. It's really sad, isn't it, that people hide it so much. And he said, "I shoot with my dad, I shoot with my friends and my dad at Christmas. We love it. It's amazing what you do." And so instantly you put at ease. The second interview that I did, I just go back. So the Jenny Faulkner and Ben Shepherd one, I think, in my opinion, turned out really well. It was actually, I'd say, the best interview that I've done today. I just felt,
apart from this one,
of course. But you got to think I'm human. This is what people forget. When I do these interviews, I try not to. I have a rule: don't read the comments.
Yeah.
Don't read the comments. I have a really nice friend who bothers to read the comments, and she filters out and she gets the nice ones, and she'll say, "Rach, it's had such a positive impact. Well done."
Lovely.
But if I go on there and honestly, some of the comments and if I didn't have thick skin and I wasn't, strong Yorkshire lass, if it was someone else on the receiving end of some of them comments, I wouldn't like to think, what that would do to them. But in my opinion, that was one of the most positive interviews that I've done. And I actually cried when I came off stage after. I was so proud of myself. I thought that couldn't have gone any better. The feedback afterwards proved it. Then I agreed to do the completely different interview on This Morning again, but with Joey Carbstrong, the vegan, the very, very militant, nasty kind of vegan. And yes, he spent the entire interview shouting at me and being rude. And you've got to know how to work things, and you've got to have experience. And my experience and my gut instinct told me this is the time when you let someone show the world what they are like. This is the time when he can do my job for me if I just kind of sit back. And again, it worked, because the headlines the next day were, militant vegans don't listen, the one track minded and all the rest of it. So
well done. I mean, sodding tricky in that sort of scenario.
So hard to sit there and take it when somebody's spouting nonsense and in an unpleasant way. I mean, I know my instinct would be to tell him where to go, probably.
Yeah.
So a lot of respect for just holding back and not going for the throat, so to speak.
People don't realise how much pressure as well, because you've got a very short window. So in that very short window, I have to try. It's kind of like you've got to be blinkered to what they're saying and almost not answer what they're saying. You've just got to say, right, millions of people are watching this. I've got a short window to get some sound bites about shooting and hunting out there, some good ones. So that's what I try and do. I use the opportunities I'm given that other people aren't. So to do what I can.
That's really interesting. I'd like to change tack a little bit, if that's all right. You are one of the more prominent, for want of a better phrase, lady shots out there. And we know from our game shooting census that about 50% of guns have got at least one female family member who's involved in shooting. But our own database, our own membership base, is about 97% male. So what advice would you give to any blokes out there who want to encourage like a sister or a daughter, a girlfriend, a wife or whatever, to get into shooting? Have you got any sort of tips for us Neanderthal blokes?
I'm laughing because when anyone ever asks me this question, the first thing that comes to my mind is a memory of my dad years ago when I was about 10 years old, handing me a 12-bore shotgun, like saying, right, this is how you hold it, da, da, da. Obviously, he let me have a dry fire first, and he put this great big kind of 205-litre barrel on one of our scrapyards in front of me. And he put this, and when I say 10 years old, I mean, I do a little bit of weight training now. But at the time, I did ballet dancing like 6-7 days a week. My mum was obsessed with me and my sister being ballerinas. So I was like a streak of piss, for want of a better word. So Dad hands me this great big 12 gauge and he points this barrel and he's like, right, you point it there and you pull the trigger. And so this little skinny blonde, I basically resembled an albino ferret when I was little, and I just go flying back. And that was my dad introducing me to shooting guns. And
I've got to add in on that. I can basically concur. But my first time shooting, pulling the trigger on a shotgun was exactly the same. It was after a syndicate day with my dad, and I was about. I mean, I must have been like 8, 9 or something silly, and he gave me his 12-bore with just whatever cartridge he had in his pocket after a syndicate day, which must have been like a 28-gram 6 back in like 1995, and so. He gives me this and goes, see that oak tree, son? See if you can hit that. And obviously, you hold the gun. You hold the gun in like what you think is in your shoulder. You've got no idea. You're 8 or 9, right? And then you pull the trigger, and it obviously goes out, and then comes back in and gives you the biggest dead arm you've ever had in your life.
Did you hit the oak tree though?
No way! Like I was nowhere near it. And I never forget, like the dead arm alone. It was like 4 years until I even picked up a gun after that.
So, well, mine was a little. You like most guys, you're like, yeah, that was awesome, and you want to go again. So, I don't know if that's what put me off. I mean, I always, from an early age, went out hunting or as I called it then, adventuring with my dad. So we flew a Harris hawk and had ferrets and had terriers, and we used to just run like savage on the yards. But shotgun shooting, and I remember Dad was one of these people. Not many people realise that my dad actually started shooting when he was 40, so quite late in life. People don't realise that. I mean, he's certainly made up for everything he missed in those 40 years.
Going to say, perhaps we should, I'm sure that everybody knows, but we should just clarify that Rachel's dad is Dave Carrie, who's got a very successful YouTube channel and a highly respected game shot. We should probably just, in case anybody listening doesn't know.
And clearly he learned how to shoot pretty quickly then, as you can see on those videos.
He did. I think Dad was in the England team within 6 months of shooting.
Really?
Very good natural shot. And I don't know if, again, listeners or yourselves know, but my dad actually has one eye.
I did not know that.
He does, and he had his eye shot out when he was a teenager with an air rifle accident. Yeah.
Wow.
Not on, yeah. And obviously, so yeah, he in his late 40s. And so he made the England and Great Britain teams very quickly and basically traveled the world clay pigeon shooting. And my sister and I used to go along with them to Texas at the World Championships and Miami and all over the world. And there were some really good female shooters at the time, and Dad kept trying to encourage me and say, you could shoot clays, look at Joe Marsh and Kate Brown, really great shots. And just the wrong time. Teenager, finally got out of the shackles of the bally shoes, discovered boys, and going down the local park and getting drunk with your friends and all of that.
On tequila.
And tequila. and shooting just didn't come into it. So sorry, we completely diversified there. So my introduction to shooting, basically, don't do that to your wives and girlfriends. And a lot of men do that and put them off.
So what? Playground, just take it slowly, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'd say don't go with your husband, your father. I'd say book yourself. I didn't actually go shooting for the first time with my dad. I didn't even tell my dad I was going shooting. I snuck off, took myself on a clay shooting introduction day. I think it was at Doveridge. Snuck off, had the day off work, and I work with my dad as well, and never said a word, because I thought if I'm rubbish, he'll be really disappointed. And if I don't like it, he'll be really disappointed. And I took myself on a ladies' day. No one there, no pressure, just, some lovely ladies, no pressure to kind of do anything. A really nice female instructor as well. And I'm not saying it has to be a female instructor, and it certainly doesn't have to be a ladies' day. But there are grounds up and down the UK. Just, call one, book a lesson. You don't need equipment. Take yourself there. You'll have all of the correct advice. They'll even give you a recoil pad for your first time, so you feel, secure, and you'll realise that gun recoil is really not that bad, unless you're 10 years old with a 12 gauge, and probably knowing my dad, a 50 gram 4 or something.
I should have listened to this podcast in the past if it was available on the same thing with skiing, because I used to be a ski instructor, but then trying to teach your other half skiing is a bad idea.
Yes.
So
well, it's like they say you shouldn't try and teach your own kids to drive either.
Yes, and it's the truth, and it's the piece of advice I give all ladies, and everyone says, obviously, Mark Windsor, you must be an excellent clay shooter because Mark's your partner. You obviously get loads of coaching. I'm like, Mark would not dare try to coach me. I don't think anyone would. So my best advice is just, you don't need to hang on to the coattails of a man. Just go out there and do it yourself. It's so much more easy to access and get into than people think.
But you're obviously a pretty handy shot here. Because I remember the side-by-side championships back in about 2012 when I couldn't even put up a fight against you. So I know that you know which way round to hold a gun.
Thank you. Do you know as well, Chris, just to rub salt in the wound, and I do have salt on my tequila glass. That was the first time I'd ever shot a side-by-side that day.
Shit. And there's
Rachel, that gives me great pleasure.
Do you know as well? It's funny you mentioned that, because do you know as well that's why I started Femme Fatales?
Oh no!
Because of that
Really?
shoot. So I shot the shoot for you, Joy. I shot the shoot. So it's the British side-by-side championships. So obviously you shoot it with side-by-side, but you have some of the top clay boys as well sneaking in there to shoot it. I think John Lee won it that year.
I went round with
and
him.
You have the gamekeepers and
yeah,
and I actually scored I think I scored. Let me get this right in case there's a record out there. I think I shot 86 out of 100.
I was going to say 87, so we'll take your 86.
And I think I came like 7th overall. And I remember sitting there at prize giving. They didn't have a ladies' prize. They only had highest gamekeeper, highest this, highest the other. And I found myself in a position thinking, right, okay, so there was 150 odd entries. So I've beat, a good few men here anyway. So you shouldn't be too worried about having to have a ladies category because you can clearly beat men as well. But then I was thinking, I just kind of want a prize. I've not been shooting very long. I just, I want some encouragement. And I thought to myself, I wonder how many ladies have come and done the same as this and not had that encouragement or incentive. So I started Femme Fatales to give them a competition where they could come and win all of these amazing prizes.
And you've gone on since that famous day, which clearly made you an epic shot. It was the competition from the Guns on Pegs boys that spurred you on to everything that you've gone on to achieve. But you competed in the Commonwealth Games, didn't you, up in Scotland, which included a rather unfortunate occurrence in a hotel in Dundee, didn't it?
I actually didn't. So there's a story behind this. I actually didn't compete in the Commonwealth Games. So I'm half Scottish. In true Rachel honesty style, I'm going to tell you my thinking behind this. So at the time, obviously I was with Mark Windsor, competing, and I figured it didn't work us trying to compete and shoot the same discipline. So I decided I was going to make a move to trap. So I moved over to trap, and at the time, double trap still existed. And I shot a bit of it, and someone approached me and said, you're not shooting this bad. And it was actually Ian McGregor, the Scottish coach at the time, the Scottish Olympic trap and double trap coach. And he was like, Rachel, a little birdie tells me, you're half Scottish. So it's like, yeah, where are you going with this? I am, proudly. My dad was born in Scotland. And he said, we don't have any female, decent female trap shooters in Scotland. their best, Shona Marshall, who's very, very, very good shot, was just retiring at the time. Then Sharon Niven, who's a very good shot, but you kind of needed 2 or 3 to make up the teams. And he said, you really should consider, having a crack for the team for the Commonwealth. Long story short, both Sharon and I didn't make, and it's really quite sad because it was in Glasgow. The games were obviously in Glasgow. So you'd think of all of the countries to field a team, it would be Scotland. Unfortunately, we were like 0.5 of a point for the minimum for the qualifying score to make a team. So they put us both in, but they put us in as fillers. So we shot alongside, we shot in the competition. We both came, we stopped basically competing and training as well at that point because double trap was being taken out. So when we learned that we hadn't made the Commonwealth Games team, or they weren't putting a Scottish team in, we both just stopped training. The dream kind of ended there. It was our first and last attempt to make it. And they were removing double trap. So about a month before the games, having not shot double trap for God knows how long, and I moved over to Olympic trap then, we both received calls and said, they basically need fillers. So an athlete filler is when they don't field enough teams. So there are spaces in the line. So they basically had to fill those spaces. And you and Sharon are obviously the most proficient shots to fill them. So they basically put us in as athlete fillers. And it was a shame really, because I think we beat the Canadians. we beat quite a few of the countries as fillers, having not trained for, 8-9 months. We literally switched disciplines. So it was a shame that they didn't just put us in as official athletes.
Such a shame.
But we still had the same experience. And then yes, the unfortunate Malmaison, yes, hotel experience happened.
So yeah, just quickly on that. So you turned up with a gun, and they obviously didn't like it, and yet the Commonwealths were being held in their town, and just didn't make sense.
Yeah, it might have had something to do with the fact that I tried to tell them it was a trombone after I realised they weren't happy. It was very silly, very annoying. I do kind of regret tweeting. We all do that nowadays, don't we? Like, you can reach companies much faster. You don't have to go on hold.
Yeah.
If you give them a quick angry tweet, me not realizing, I had a few thousand followers and it might have a bit more impact than someone else's tweet. So I tweeted there like, I've missed the opening ceremony and this and that and the other, and it's Malmaison's fault. And yeah, Daily Mail journalist must have been on my account, picked that up, and yeah.
Whoops.
Just cause trouble wherever I go. Wherever I go, I cause trouble. That's
Right, we're going to need to wrap this up pretty soon because my twins are going to be home and then we definitely won't be able to record. But I wanted to ask you, Rachel, you famously only serve your family meat that you've hunted yourself. So I wanted to ask, what are you having for supper tonight?
I am having pasta with no meat in it tonight.
Vegan.
Seriously. Vegetarian.
That's your one night a week.
So, yeah, but obviously with lockdown being in play, it's been difficult to get out anyway. And we've been shooting a few pigeons. We're a little bit sick of eating pigeon now. So I've recently started ordering these this meal kits online where it all comes and it's all there. So I've actually got in touch with the company, and they have venison on the menus. So I've got in touch with them and I'm trying to link them up with a game company. So hopefully in the future,
cool.
hopefully they can kind of put more game on their menus.
I think that could be a really powerful thing. I did a thing with the BGA, a restaurant kit, during the first lockdown, I think, and it was such a lot of fun to do. But I think that could be a really powerful way to get game out to a wider audience as well. I think that's a really cool thing to do.
I think that's what we miss in shooting a little bit, the ideas and the ability, to do that. That's one place that always surprises me that the industry don't kind of lean on me for. They must have picked up that I'm quite good and quite innovative and quite good at picking up trends, and obviously people are interested, and I've got the profile, and I'm surprised that they don't lend on that experience a little bit more and ask me for my advice and ideas and how they think they could push game a little bit better into different avenues.
Let us know how you get on with that. I'd be keen to hear. One of the best things about having really interesting guests on our podcast is getting tips, Rachel. And certainly recently I can just remember Gerwin giving tips about shoots, and Sarah Farnsworth had been some amazing places. I want to know just quickly before we get on to desert island shooting, and I'm sure this is going to link, what are your favorite shoots? Talk to me about game shoots.
My favourite game shoots. Well, I'm a northern girl, aren't I? We get a nosebleed if we go too far south. We are really lucky up here. We can't deny we're really lucky. We have the Wolds on our doorstep. We have the water priories, the Duncan Parks, the Revos. We have Helmsley in this hub of absolutely amazing shoots all around it. Whitfield's one of my favourite. Water priory, obviously one of my favourites as well. That's where I kind of cut my teeth game shooting.
It's a hell of a place to learn.
Yeah. You've certainly got you gain enough experience there, that's for sure. God, I have loads of favourite shoots, but I must say I do like I like the wild days, the estates that just a little, they have interesting terrain and they have a little bit of something going on there with regards to the terrain. So that would be Whitfield for me. And Duncan Park has nice terrain too.
Duncan Park's very pretty, but Whitfield, I totally agree. Actually, back in the early days of Guns on Pegs, we used to sell quite a lot of shooting for Whitfield through the website, just people finding it. And Stuart used to invite us up on the beaters day, and we'd do all the extreme drives, and he would just put me right in the middle. Just stand there, Chris, that's fine. And I used to take my stupid little side-by-side with my 30-gram fives or whatever, and this was years ago. And my God, talk about demoralizing really quickly. That's a place where you go tooled up properly, isn't it?
It is. And you know what, I've shot Whitfield a few times, and I can honestly say, and I've got a Whitfield extreme cap. Humble brag there. I think I'm the only woman in the world to have one. But I honestly, even that day aside, when I got the extreme cap, I just felt so humbled by those birds. And we're not going to go into the high bird debate. I suggest you have Dad on to do that. That's his expertise. But it's such a humbling experience to see and to really appreciate what pheasants can do flight wise, but how people can present them to do that. And I've been game shooting 12 years now, which might not sound a lot to a lot of people, but when I say I've been game shooting for 12 years, Dave's my dad. It's all we do. We don't, have a few days. That is what, we love to do. So I've spent quite a bit of time in the field, and I can honestly say I think it was 2 seasons ago, we went up there and we did half walked up, half driven, which was amazing. And we did the extreme drives. And it's the first time that I've ever actually felt worthy of Whitfield. And I had a drive, and I honestly, it's one of the best memories of all of my shooting. And it'll forever kind of imprint Whitfield on my heart of my favourite shooting estates, because I just seem to do the birds justice.
Awesome.
And it was captured on film.
That always helps.
It's not a fisherman's story. So if I died tomorrow and could just say that I did Whitfield birds justice just for one day, I'd be happy.
So I think I know the answer then to your desert island shooting, your kind of imaginary last day ever. It sounds like it's going to be Whitfield. Is that right?
I think so. I think it'd have to be.
Who would you have with you?
Yeah, special place.
Yeah, who are you taking?
Definitely my son, who's really getting into shooting and is an absolute demon on driven. My dad, obviously. Wish I could have Des back. My loader, my late loader, who passed away a couple of years ago. Mum, because she's an absolutely amazing loader. She steals cartridges from the neighbouring gun if you, God forbid, should ever run out. She actually runs to the next peg. She doesn't care who it is, steals their cartridge bag and runs back to you and continues loading. So definitely Mum. and just family really, and good friends. It's what shooting's all about. Days in the field with good people.
Hear,
What a
hear.
lovely way to end it.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I love it. It's just nostalgic, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. That's exactly what this podcast's all about, really. So it's absolutely perfect. Rachel, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. It's been a really, really enjoyable chat.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Rachel. Really fun.
You are most welcome. Thank you for having me.
Before we go, as per usual, there's one final reminder that you can get your hands on a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs shooting sock garters and become a member of the Order of the Garters by sending us your shooting dilemmas to resolve, emailing us to let us know where you've been listening, letting us know if you're a band who wants to get involved with our party or in any other way, actually, if you're like a juggler or whatever. And like the last episode, I'm sure I've forgotten, there's so many ways you can get these garters now. I can't remember them all. But you've listened to the episodes, you know what the score is. Send us an email, pod@gunsonpegs.com. And if we make use of what you send us, you're going to get some of these garters. Until the next episode, thanks very much for listening and goodbye.
Thank fuck we didn't run out of shit to say.